does not sound urgent. This is an R&AW active field agent whose hands had come upon important information. Similar information had been reported earlier too, but it got lost somewhere in the files. Consequently, their station head does not consider the latest update of that report urgent. Both the initial report and its latest update were about the same person.
I believe that he's on this flight, and Osama also likes him.
December 24, 1999, Kathmandu, R&AW agent Ramchandra Yadav, following ISI's Fard Hashmi, reaches a marketplace. A local takes away a red bag placed in Hashmi's car. Ramchandra immediately reports this news to his station head, Kailash Chauhan. Additionally, he informs that the previous night, 5 Pakistanis were staying in a hotel room with Hashmi, where they had been for the past 10 days. It seems ISI is planning something big. Ramchandra also has a tape of their meeting, which mentions a name, Amjad, and hints at a major operation. Chauhan reminds Ramchandra that Amjad's previous report had not received any reply from any agency. However, Ramchandra appears to be a proactive agent and states that he had detained the driver of those 5 individuals the previous night. Despite this, Kailash does not consider his report urgent. He places air tickets in an envelope and leaves. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Kathmandu International Airport, where the 5 individuals mentioned by Ramchandra are found. On the other side, Flight IC 814 is preparing for departure. An airport employee carries a large red bag towards the flight. At the same time, Captain Sharan Dev, accompanied by an air hostess, disembarks to call their respective families. The air hostess' father is seen in a wheelchair at her home. The boarding announcement is made in the airport lounge. Proactive Ramchandra learns that the man with the bag is named Dinesh, who works in air catering. Without wasting time, Ramchandra calls the airport immediately, but the front desk staff tries to entangle him with questions. Dinesh places the large bag on the conveyor belt and puts a smaller bag in the overhead cabin compartment. During boarding, Hashmi also arrives at the airport with a briefcase. We then learn the backstory of the leader of these 5 individuals. His father tells him to bring his brother back or have the courage to die trying. Hashmi's briefcase now comes into the hands of the leader's accomplice, who carefully places it in the overhead locker. The air hostess who made the call is named Indrani, and her colleague is Chaya. The 5 ISI operatives sit in different parts of the plane. Meanwhile, Flight IC 814 moves towards the runway, and Ramchandra reaches the Tribhuvan International Airport. He requests airport authorities to stop the flight, but they inform him that it has already been delayed and they have no official instructions to halt it. Ramchandra sees Hashmi's car leaving the airport. Despite his efforts, IC 814 takes off from Kathmandu at 4 p.m. At 30,000 feet cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign turns off, and there is activity in the cabin. One of the 5 Pakistanis takes out boxes from the red bag and distributes them to his accomplices. Their leader also retrieves Hashmi's briefcase and, along with an accomplice, moves towards the cockpit. The accomplice addresses him as Chief. As soon as the flight purser comes out of the cockpit, the chief storms into the cockpit with a grenade and gun. His accomplice holds the purser outside. The 4 hijackers wave guns and start beating passengers to mentally break them and force surrender. In the cockpit, the leader tells the captain they are heading to Kabul. The co-pilot attempts to explain they don't have enough fuel for Kabul, but the hijackers are well prepared. The leader's accomplice, Berger, asks for the flight route plan. He notices code 7500 on the console, which relays a hijacking message to ATC. The captain had relayed the hijacking message at the first opportunity. Varanasi ATC responds to the relay, which Berger answers, informing them the flight is hijacked and heading to Kabul. Varanasi ATC relays this information to Delhi ATC. Soon, the news leaks to the media and reaches R&AW headquarters, where the usual sibling rivalry between R&AW and IB Intelligence Bureau continues. Joint Secretary Ranjan Mishra breaks the news to R&AW head V.K. Agarwal. The information then reaches IB Director Kohli and Additional Director Mukul Mohan. At IB headquarters, the rivalry with R&AW persists. Meanwhile, at R&AW headquarters, Agarwal learns that Ram had anticipated this hijacking an hour ago via cable. The cabin crew, Indrani and Chaya, are instructed to cooperate with the hijackers as they mean business. The Ministry of External Affairs initiates communication with Kabul asset. Finally, when the opportunity arises, Captain Sharan Dev makes an announcement in the cabin, reassuring passengers that they are with them and trying to resolve the situation as soon as possible. The Ministry of External Affairs quickly connects the hijacking to Maulana Masood, who was then detained in Jammu's Kotpalwal jail and is immediately shifted to a high-security cell. In the cockpit, Captain Dev informs the leader that if they want to land in Delhi, They must begin their descent now, as there isn't enough fuel to reach Kabul. On the flight engineer's advice, Berger checks the readings and confirms to the leader that the plane cannot go much beyond Delhi. As soon as the plane enters Indian territory, the Intelligence Bureau, IB, becomes active. Assistant Director Sanjay Mehta, who has better relations with Masood, is sent to extract information. National Security Advisor Vinay Kaul insists the plane must not reach Kabul under any circumstances. At R&AW headquarters, Ramchandra is instructed to continue interrogating the driver and find out where he had taken them. Ram even offers money to extract information. In the Ministry of External Affairs office, Ram's earlier message, which had been dismissed by Chauhan, is revisited. Eventually, they find the message about Amjad, also known as Dr. Before the Crisis Management Group meeting, the agencies realized that this critical message had somehow been overlooked. The External Affairs Minister Vijay Bansingh arrives for the meeting. Around the same time, news arrives that the Prime Minister has landed in Delhi. R&AW Joint Secretary Mishra reveals they have been unable to contact Kathmandu station head Chauhan. However, they have spoken with the flight's captain, who confirmed there are 5 hijackers on board. Through Ramchandra, they acquire an audio message from the hotel meeting, which is finally identified by the Ministry of External Affairs Joint Secretary DRS as Amjad Farooqi's voice. DRS explains that Amjad previously worked for ISI but now works for Mullah Omar and is Osama's favorite. According to DRS, Amjad is likely on the flight. In the cockpit, following the leader's instructions, the captain requests permission from Lahore ATC to connect after leaving Indian airspace. Shortly afterward, Delhi ATC responds that Lahore has denied them landing permission. The leader refuses to accept this. At the same time, the passenger list reveals why Chauhan, the station head, is unreachable. He is on flight YC-814. This revelation leads all agencies to remove his name from their discussions. In Kathmandu, the driver finally admits that Dr. handed a large bag to a man, the same bag Dinesh had placed on the conveyor belt. Lahore ATC denies flight IC-814 permission to land. The leader, unprepared for this news, doesn't know what to do next. Indian Airlines has yet to officially confirm the hijacking, but the news is already public on television. The leader, now quiet after Lahore's refusal, listens to the doctor's advice that their next option is Amritsar. When Amritsar's confirmation comes, the NSA heads to the PMO and instructs the NSG to take charge. NSG Commander Ravi informs the External Affairs Minister that they need an hour and a half to reach Amritsar Airport. However, the minister believes they don't have that much time, so they consider preparing Punjab police commandos and mobilizing the NSG simultaneously. Punjab's DGP states that they have commandos in Amritsar who can reach the airport within 10 minutes but need the Chief Minister's permission for the operation. On the aircraft, all able-bodied passengers are gathered and moved to the front of the plane, including a newlywed, Rupesh, returning from his honeymoon. Elderly, women, and children are kept in the rear section of the plane. The passengers moved to business class have their hands and legs tied with cable ties. In Kathmandu, Ram finally reaches Dinesh, but ISI was already waiting for him. Despite this, Ramchandra manages to apprehend Dinesh. Amid heavy fog, IC-814 begins its descent towards Amritsar Airport and lands at 7:15 p.m., where Punjab police commandos are ready. The hijackers refuse to let the captain shut off the plane's engines and instruct him to keep circling. In the CMG control room, the handler's intercepted message instructs the doctor to attack the passengers due to the fuel tanker's delay. The doctor slits Rupesh's throat in the front row of business class and starts stabbing another passenger on the shoulder. Rupesh is unable to speak due to his injuries, while the other passenger screams in pain. Punjab's chief minister refuses any bloodshed in Amritsar. Meanwhile, the External Affairs Minister attempts to gain permission for a commando operation. Flight engineer Nangia informs the captain about the attack on the passengers. The captain asks the airport authority about the location of their refueling Bowser. Finally, the Bowser emerges from the fog, and the captain is instructed to shut down the aircraft engines. However, the hijackers are no longer willing to comply. They suspect that the Bowser might contain commandos. The External Affairs Minister continues his efforts, while the airport authorities persist in instructing the captain to shut down the engines. However, the hijackers are now certain that the plane will not stop and intend to fly out of the airport. Punjab's DGP reports that they have not received any orders from higher authorities for an operation. The Bowser positions itself directly in front of the plane on the runway. Amritsar ATC issues an abort takeoff order, but under the hijackers' pressure, the captain is forced to take off against his will. Directorate of Research and Analysis passes this information to the External Affairs Minister. Due to the coalition government, delays occur in issuing official orders. The plane flies at a very low altitude from Amritsar to Lahore. Mukund Mohan from R&AW, through his sources, reports that the plane has only 10 minutes of fuel left. Despite the suspension of dialogue between the two countries following the Kargil War, External Affairs Minister calls Pakistan to seek a resolution to the crisis. The co-pilot relays a distress message to Lahore ATC. Lahore ATC turns off runway lights. The ATC orders the aircraft to clear its airspace. Captain Shuran knows that the plane cannot land on the runway in the dark. The plane is on the verge of crashing when Captain Dev announces an emergency landing. Moments before the crash, Lahore ATC grants the plane permission to land. Captain Shuran Dev successfully manages to land the aircraft on the runway. As the plane lands, the Bowser quickly approaches it, but Rupesh's condition in the cabin worsens. Outside, the refueling process begins. A medical doctor aboard the flight informs the crew that Rupesh must be taken to a hospital immediately. However, the doctor receives an order from his handler to leave as soon as refueling is complete. When refueling finishes, Captain Shuran pleads with the hijackers to release the injured passengers, but they refuse and insist the plane must take off without opening its doors. Captain Shuran's family is sent back to New Delhi from Hyderabad, where media questions portray Captain Shuran as responsible for the quick takeoff from Amritsar. In the cockpit, Captain Shuran requests landing permission from Kabul ATC, but it is denied as they do not have night landing facilities. Kabul ATC allows them to land only after 3 a.m., but the plane cannot remain airborne for the next 7 hours. At R&AW headquarters, Agrawal learns through Ramchandra that Amjad had placed another bag on the flight, a small bag belonging to ISY and a large one to Amjad. The question arises, what was inside the bags? Since Kabul denies landing permission, the plane is diverted to Dubai on December 25, Christmas Day. The External Affairs Minister calls Washington to negotiate with Dubai to release the women and children aboard. Dubai grants immediate landing permission, but the plane is directed to the Al Minhas Air Force Base instead of the main international airport, confusing the hijackers. Berger claims he has seen Dubai Airport and that this is not it. Eventually, through a phone call, the handler informs Amjad that they are indeed in Dubai. Refueling starts in Dubai. In Kathmandu, Ramchandra tries to learn the contents of the bags from Dinesh. The Bowser connects to the plane, but Dubai ATC demands the hijackers release injured women and children before allowing the Bowser to disconnect. The leader initially refuses but eventually complies, releasing the women and children, except Rupesh's wife, as Rupesh had already passed away. At 4:05 a.m., IC-814 takes off from Dubai. Media blame Captain Shuran for the premature takeoff from Amritsar. On the second day of the hijacking, December 25 morning, the doctor finally names Kandahar as their destination. At 8:05 a.m., IC-814 lands in Kandahar. Upon landing, the hijackers appear relieved. Berger introduces his associates, Bola and Shankar, to the passengers, assuring them they can now relax and even use the restroom. The plane is surrounded by Taliban forces as soon as it stops. The young Taliban foreign minister, Mutawakil, also arrives in Kandahar. Rupesh's wife is told that Rupesh was left in Dubai, but no details of his condition are shared. Shortly after, food is delivered to the passengers. The Prime Minister condemns the hijacking and declares that no compromises will be made with the hijackers. This news quickly reaches the hijackers. The leader threatens to refuel the plane and crash it into Parliament in Delhi if no negotiations occur. Bureaucrats advise the External Affairs Minister to involve the UN. On the third day of the hijacking, December 26, the condition of the toilets inside the plane deteriorates. With no progress in negotiations, the leader expresses his intent to take the plane to Delhi. The captain tries to explain that the plane has not undergone any technical inspection, but the leader remains indifferent. As promised by the Taliban, the refueling begins. In the cockpit, the captain tells the co-pilot they could jettison the fuel once the pressure increases by bypassing it out of the tanks. The co-pilot finds this plan too dangerous and backs out. Despite the captain's persuasion, the co-pilot Sunil leaves the cockpit. Flight engineer Nangia stays with the captain. As the tank's meter rises, Berger informs the passengers they will take off since their government has refused to negotiate with them. As the pressure peaks, Captain Shuran stands by the console, ready for action. When asked by the leader, it is revealed that the fuel operator does not know how to refuel properly. As the tanks are nearly full, Captain Dev jettisons the fuel, causing the runway around the aircraft to be soaked in oil. The doctor storms into the cockpit and starts assaulting the captain. Co-pilot Sunil returns to the cockpit, apologizing to Captain Dev and flight engineer Nangia. Around the same time, a UN plane lands in Kandahar with international press and officials, and Indian media is also informed. The international media questions Taliban Foreign Minister Muta Wakil on how food was arranged so quickly, hinting that they might have known about the plane's arrival beforehand. The foreign minister has no answer. In an all-party meeting of the government, it is finally decided to initiate negotiations with the hijackers. The External Affairs Minister and the National Security Advisor organize the negotiation team, appointing IB's Mukul Mohan as the lead negotiator. Mukul Mohan suggests including a team of commandos disguised as doctors and nurses. Upon landing in Kandahar, the Taliban thoroughly inspects the negotiators' plane, which includes commandos disguised as doctors. At the earliest opportunity, R&AW Chief Mishra is informed about the presence of RDX on the plane. It is the fourth day of the hijacking. Kandahar, at this time, is under the control of two armies: Mullah Omar's Taliban and Osama bin Laden's loyal opium smuggling militia. Soon, the Indian government begins formal talks with the hijackers. Mukul Mohan first speaks with Captain Shuran Dev, boosting his morale. On request to deboard Rupesh's widow, the chief hijacker threatens mass killings. Mukul Mohan counters strongly and postpones further negotiations to the next day. On the fifth day, technicians are sent to repair the aircraft's toilets, while the hijackers finalize their list of demands. Muta Wakil informs DRS that the hijackers will present their demands by 4 p.m. The toilet situation in the plane remains dire, with Berger keeping a Western passenger seated near the toilets as punishment. Captain Shuran asks Berger to inspect the toilet pipelines and valves. The Western passenger exerts pressure on Chaya, who dutifully tries to clean the toilets but finds it unbearable. Meanwhile, in Kathmandu, ISI attacks Ramchandra's team, and this report reaches Mishra in Kandahar. Around 4 p.m., the hijackers convey their demands to the negotiators, including the release of 35 individuals, $200 million, and the body of Sajjad Afghani. Mukul Mohan informs the chief hijacker that Afghani was buried 6 months back. Afghani had infiltrated India to rescue Maulana Masood. The hijackers remain adamant on their demands and Mukul Mohan postpones negotiations to the next day. Captain Shuran tries to unclog the aircraft's toilet system, earning gratitude from the passengers. Finally, station head Kailash Chauhan is seen sitting silently in a corner of the flight. On the sixth day, Sanjay Mehta loses his temper over Masood, questioning who wants him released, as ISI wouldn't do it. Mukul Mohan tries to provoke the chief into naming Masood, but the doctor intervenes and advises the chief to buy time. At the doctor's suggestion, the chief asks for an hour. The CMG control room approves Masood Azhar's name for release. A debate begins in the country between national morale and the family's pleas. Some are against releasing terrorists, while passengers' relatives want the ordeal to end. DRS tries to convince Muta Wakil that the ongoing events in Kandahar are damaging the Taliban's image. During negotiations, when the chief tries to assert dominance, Mukul Mohan addresses him by name and offers to release Masood along with 2 others. The chief is left speechless. Muta Wakil promises DRS that nothing anti-Islamic will occur on their land. The Taliban wishes to clear its image before the global press, but Mukul Mohan sees it as posturing and prefers a commando operation. DRS conveys Muta Wakil's assurances, but Mukul Mohan decides to make another attempt. Mishra supports Mohan's approach. The situation escalates at the airport, with the Taliban forces surrounding the plane. DRS is displeased with these developments, stating that their troubles are far from over, as Mullah Omar was scheduled to meet Osama bin Laden. Ramchandra reaches Delhi with his report, linking the RDX to Al-Qaeda. The bag containing the RDX was placed by Amjad, who no longer works for ISI. This means the other hijackers were unaware of the RDX. As negotiations fail, Amjad prepares to take matters into his own hands. Meanwhile, Ramchandra receives clearance in Kathmandu. On the 7th day of the hijacking, the atmosphere in the plane appears slightly relaxed. There is a sense of hope among everyone that the hijacking might soon end with a resolution. Mukul Mohan attempts to contact the hijackers, but no one is present in the cockpit. DRS apologizes to Muta Wakil on behalf of Mukul Mohan. The Indian negotiation team waits anxiously on the runway for Muta Wakil to arrive following the conclusions of the previous night's meeting. Muta Wakil reaches the airport, and this time, the Taliban directly call the hijackers. When the chief doesn't respond to the radio call, the doctor tells him that they will have to negotiate. Muta Wakil comes on the line and informs the chief that the passengers are their guests and that no blood will be spilled on Kandahar soil. The hijackers must abandon their demand for Sajjad Afghani's body and $200 million. However, if no resolution is reached, the plane will be refueled the next day, December 31st, allowing them to go wherever they wish. Thus, December 30th, the 7th day of the hijacking, becomes the last day of negotiations. Negotiations resume, with the Indian government presenting a list that includes Masood Azhar and 4 others. However, the chief names only Masood Azhar, Omar Saeed Sheikh, and Mushtaq Ahmed Zargar. Hearing these names, the negotiators are not pleased. NSA officials clarify that the 2 named along with Azhar are in a Kashmir jail, and the Chief Minister of Kashmir will never agree to their release. The External Affairs Minister has a different perspective and prioritizes the hostages' return at any cost. He is prepared to take the blame for releasing 3 dreaded terrorists in exchange for saving the hostages. The issue with Kashmir's Chief Minister remains unresolved, and R&AW Chief Agrawal is tasked with handling it. Shortly afterward, this decision is made public through the media. The Chief Minister of Kashmir considers the 2 terrorists a significant threat. On the 8th day, the External Affairs Minister reaches Kandahar with the 3 terrorists, finally resolving the hostage crisis. One by one, the hijackers disembark from the plane. Before leaving Kandahar, DRS informs Mutawakil that the bomb-laden bag is still on the plane and that the person who placed it there must remove it. Finally, all the hostages breathe a sigh of relief on the 8th day. For Captain Sharan, it is an emotional moment. The External Affairs Minister praises Captain Sharan for his courage, likening him to a soldier. That same evening, 17 kilograms of RDX is recovered from ISI First Officer Hashmi's house in Kathmandu, and he is deported. Ramchandra Yadav claims he had nothing to do with the incident. Meanwhile, a celebration is held at Osama bin Laden's residence that evening. A week after the hijacking, Masood Azhar establishes Jaish-e-Mohammed in Karachi. This organization later orchestrated the attack on the Indian Parliament, the 26/11 Mumbai attacks, and the Pulwama attack in 2019. Omar Saeed Sheikh became the mastermind behind the 2002 kidnapping of Daniel Pearl, while Mushtaq Ahmed Zargar returned to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and resumed actions against India.